Well, I think we've got a good number to get started with, and we've got a lot to cover. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today for the first of Hubbub's 2022 webinar series. I'm Kat Carter, Hubbub's commercial director, and I'm so glad to see so many members of our community joining us today. For this session, we've brought together peers from the HE fundraising sector who are making step changes towards being more digital. The last 2 years have been a whirlwind, and you'll no doubt agree that the need to be more digital and the want to put a greater emphasis on increasing donor participation through online giving has grown as a result. In the latest Status of UK Fundraising report from Blackbaud, 60% of nonprofit professionals agreed that digital transformation is crucial to success, that technology must be used to improve the way organizations operate, and that data must also be used to improve overall performance. But only 12% of respondents describe themselves as digitally mature, and this is regardless of a charity size. Of these organizations who describe themselves as being digitally mature, they were found to be more likely to gain more supporters than they were losing, to be optimistic that they would reach new audiences, that they would be more effective at managing change and being agile. And these individuals also believe that they would thrive in the next 12 to 18 months. And while the number of organizations who describe themselves as being digitally mature was in the minority, 79% of those who participated in the survey thought that it was important for the community to develop its digital maturity. And all of this is to say that there is a lot of potential for organizations to develop if they have the right digital skills, systems, and leadership in place to make that happen. And this is what we hope to provide a bit of insight on today's webinar. Today, we have representatives from the University of Manchester, the University of York, and the University of Leeds, who will kindly be sharing their own experiences of how they've embraced digital within their own individual giving programs, and how that's helped to increase engagement and donor participation within each of their respective programs. Each institution here today is at a different stage in their own digital journey, and I'm sure everyone here will be able to take something away from what our speakers will have to share. Maybe you've made the decision to put a greater focus on digital channels, but aren't quite sure where to start or what shape that journey will take. Or maybe you've already adopted digital strategies and are looking for other ways to integrate even more digital engagements into your overall program. Either way, as I said, there will be something for everyone in this session. Once our speakers have given an overview of their own digital experience, we'll lead a panel discussion. So if you have any questions for the panel, please submit them using the Q&A button, and we'll try and get to as many as possible. Now, on to our speakers. Tom is the head of fundraising programs at the University of York, and he started his fundraising career in the charity sector working for the likes of Battersea Dogs and Cats and Prostate Cancer UK. During his time in the charity sector, Tom specialized in regular giving acquisition and new product development. And 4 years ago, Tom made the move into higher ed and is heading up the University of York's participation giving team. Tom was tasked with diversifying York's program to maximize the impact of its first ever institutional philanthropic campaign. And Tom currently leads a program that utilizes a range of marketing channels, including direct mail, telephone fundraising, email, social media, community fundraising, giving days, and crowdfunding. Jessica is the fundraising, marketing, and communications officer at the University of Leeds, where she heads up the team's regular giving program, including their direct marketing, digital, as well as their telephone appeal. Working across and writing all communications in line with their regular giving strategy, Jessica's role is to ensure that supporters are at the core of fundraising and stewardship appeals, from data selection to copy production, creating a caring, coherent, and consistent donor experience. Recently, Jessica has begun to pay special attention to the university's digital fundraising strategy, working to develop the digital infrastructure of the university's advancement team to better support this and developing its culture of sharing fundraising success. And finally, Emma is a University of Manchester alumna and has been a regular giving officer at the university for over 3 years. Originally managing the university's crowdfunding platform, Emma has since worked on implementing a new and vastly improved digital fundraising offer at Manchester, alongside her work in direct mail and community fundraising. And with that, I will hand things over to Tom from York.
Thank you, Kat. That introduction was a bit awkward to listen to when it's about yourself, so but thank you for that. So yes, hello everyone, I'm Tom Piercy. I'm the Head of Fundraising Programmes at the University of York, and I'm going to introduce you to our digital journey. So Kat, if you could kindly click. Okay, great. So I thought I'd start off by kind of showing everybody where we came from and how our budget in regular giving has changed over the last 7 or 8 years. So you can see here, back in 2013-14, we made the decision to invest in our very own crowdfunding platform with Hubbub. We were the first university in the UK to do that, quickly followed by Southampton, where Kat used to work. And I think there's some dispute as to whether or not Kat beat us to it or not, but I think our platform went live first, so we take the crown. At that time, we were investing heavily in our telephone fundraising campaign, which is run by student callers at the university. And we use that for acquisition and retention and everything in between. So this was our kind of first attempt at doing something digital, really. And we had a small community program going on at the time that wasn't really working for us, and it wasn't scalable. And if Kat could kindly click, you'll see the kind of journey we've been on since then. Oh, that happened very quickly. Apologies, I thought that was going to go quite slow. See if it goes any slower, Kat. And you click. There you go. So you can see that we started to invest in direct mail, and we did some legacy comms. You can start to see that in 16, 17, we really invested in direct mail. And we thought that was going to be the way that we built our program. And then as we progress into the last few years, you can see that we've invested in a Giving Day program. We've invested in a new community program, which focuses on digital and uses our crowdfunding platform for people to raise money through. And we've introduced a multi-channel approach for our direct mail appeals. So whenever we do a direct mail now, we have paid social media, organic social media, and we have emails to accompany anything that we send out. So you can see quite a difference in our program from 2014 to today, where we've now got under 50% of our program being spent on telephone fundraising. And you can see we've got a real mix of different marketing channels that are working for us. So Kat, if you could kindly click ahead. So you can see here a breakdown of what this diversification towards a more digital marketing mix has meant for us. You can see that where we introduced Giving Day and where we introduced a digital aspect to our community fundraising in 2019, that there was a 50%, it was actually a 49.9% increase in donor numbers between 18-19 and 19-20. And that was the desired impact that we really wanted. We wanted to make a bit of a splash that year and to bring in lots of new donors, which it definitely did. You can see on the right hand side of the screen, our income, that was our best financial year to date as well. And there hasn't been a change in our operating budget across these 5 years. So this is all just about redistributing our investment to try and make sure we've got an offer that works for all of our alumni across all of the different ages that we're speaking to. So Kat, if you could click ahead again. So you can see in terms of the return on investment, there's a significant increase in 19-20 for us, where we were relying on new digital channels to try and return an investment from harder to reach channels. So this was unlocking younger alumni who maybe hadn't donated in the past when we were sending them stuff in the post or trying to call them up over the phone. This was non-alumni, so people that we wouldn't normally have contact information for. So this was a real increase from community fundraising. So people receiving donations from friends and family members, for example. And we also saw a real steep increase in staff giving during this period. So by bringing things online, it was a lot easier for us to make an ask of our colleagues. And I think we've seen our staff giving rate go from 9% to 35% since we made that change. So there's some real significant changes as a result of us introducing digital into our marketing mix. So in terms of what's next for us, it won't come as a surprise to anyone who's been listening for the last couple of minutes that since we made that first investment in 2014, there's been a marked improvement in the number of new donors that we've acquired as a result of our digital communications. So you can see the top bar at the top in grey has grown year on year to a point now where it's one of our biggest contributors in terms of cash gift acquisitions, which was the intention. So digital for us is a real driver of cash donations, single cash donations from our alumni audience and other audiences as well. So the next steps for us are to try and repeat this or do something similar in our regular giving acquisition and retention program. So if Kat, you could click one last time, you can see there's a complete difference in the look of this graph, with telephone still being the main contributor in terms of new regular donors. That's not really going to change for us. We don't have the benefits of the charity sector where we do door-to-door and private site fundraising. Our kind of main direct dialogue channel is telephone, and that will forever be the best channel for us in terms of regular giving, acquisition and retention. But we've got a real solid base of digital communications now, and we want to try and use them to improve retention of regular donors and start contributing a little bit more in terms of acquisition of regular donors as well. Thank you.
It's on to me. So a bit different from York at Leeds. So we are probably at the start of our digital journey, which would probably be all the hints and tips for those who are looking to start a real digital strategy where you are. So just give you a context about Leeds. So in 2020, we finished the Making a World of Difference campaign, which raised £100 million over 10 years. And so we found ourselves during the middle of lockdown without a big target and without a campaign, and really looking at fundraising in the business as usual world. So what does fundraising look like at Leeds in that context? Well, actually, that really coincided with what we were doing generally in the regular giving programme. So we looked at the bedrock of what fundraising was at Leeds, and that was about student support. So we really refocused our efforts to make sure that we were fundraising for student support, because that really supported our idea of retention focused strategy. So we actually halted acquisition for a number of years whilst we got retention under our belts, really. And even when we picked up acquisition, it was about looking at how we acquire donors with an eye to retain them. And with all of this, putting our audience at the core of our communications from, the moment we select them to the moment that they get their ask and the kind of communications that they receive. So this is where digital entered Leeds. And it had to kind of fit into this world where there wasn't, branding or quick wins or big numbers to play with. But at the same time, it had to work alongside a really, complex retention strategy for our donors and a reframing of our focus. If you wouldn't mind hitting the next slide, please. So I always think of digital Leeds as a story of two halves. There was pre-COVID and there's post-COVID. And I know this will be a story for many of you. It's not to say that pre-COVID we weren't sending emails. We were. Don't worry, we weren't just phoning and sending direct mail. But it wasn't very successful due to the infrastructure we had. So at Leeds, we didn't have a proper website. We had an alumni website and a campaign website, which obviously with the end of campaign became obsolete. And the alum and never the two kind of met in a way. We didn't have an email marketing system, which was easy to use. So it was very resource heavy and required somebody who was very experienced in coding to be able to form our emails and send them out, which meant that the level of personalization was very limited and we couldn't achieve what we could do in direct mail through email. So as a result, we probably didn't put as much effort in as we perhaps should have. Our giving platform, or e-module rather, wasn't very user-friendly either. So even if we did get people online, it was a limitation to how successful digital giving was. We also faced a bit of an identity confusion at Leeds. So historically, we've always gone, our regular giving program has always gone by the Footsteps Fund, which was really successful in the early days of the program. But we found that in our case, if people wanted to give to the University of Leeds and they typed it into, say, Google, they were confronted with an identity that they didn't recognise. It was a big SEO problem. Similarly, if somebody, we had people say to us, oh, I don't give to the University of Leeds, I give to the Footsteps Fund, which is a big problem in and of itself. So that's where COVID happened. And we all got sent home on March 19th, 2020, without the inability to process gifts on campus, but with the student need greater than ever. So we formed the COVID Emergency Fund, our student support fund, through our Hubbub crowdfunding platform. And so digital became a necessity and really was a proven concept that we could acquire and get donors online, and it was something worth putting money and effort into. So with COVID also brought opportunities. So it's not all about we couldn't fundraise through direct mail, so therefore we had to go online. There was incredible opportunities there. So even when we did send out mailings, QR codes and their massive resurgence made that link between the paper and the digital so much easier. And we have found through Google Analytics that our QR codes are really successful to converting people to digital giving. We were able to really make a case of support so that fundraising impact stories made it onto our general alumni comms, because we have incredible stories as those fundraisers. So it was really an opportunity to be able to sort of piggyback on the idea that the whole university was going digital. So therefore we could share impact stories, and we had so many stories to share. So they were kind of taking advantage of that. Like I mentioned, we didn't have a proper website. So with COVID, that became a really big problem for our department as a whole. So we could piggyback onto website projects, email marketing systems that the department was buying in for our communications team, and then eventually the causes platform Hubbub. And really what we did was take advantage of the climate itself to really push giving online. Next slide, please. So for us, in terms of results, unfortunately, I don't have any amazing graphs because, like I said, we're really at the beginning of this for ourselves and we're still developing our metrics. So we proved in the past couple of years that people do give online, and it was about how we could use online as a platform. So for instance, 15% of gifts were received online in 18-19 versus 31% in 2021, which, considering that we were still sending out direct mail in 2021, really shows digital playing its part in generating income. For instance, one of our campaigns in 2021, February 1, 53% of gifts to that campaign were received online. And I don't know if you remember February 2021, but we were all back into lockdown. So that was a bit of a relief when it came to gift processing. So in terms of like what we deem as being a really big success in our digital strategy so far, is buying in, getting that buy-in, and that, the changing culture and attitude it leads, is that idea that, fundraising and general alumni communications would never really meet in the middle. And we've really broken down those barriers. So we've got fundraising / impact messaging into newsletters, into our alumni magazine. So it's not seen as, oh, that's only something donors want to hear. It's actually something that the wider community can really benefit from listening to. But also, what role digital plays in our program there's been a heightened awareness of that. So, more people getting invested in what we could do and all the exciting things that can come when you fundraise digitally. And as a result of that, more money, more resource has been put into our digital platforms, as I mentioned before. Next slide, please. So what's next for Leeds? All questions, I'm afraid, but questions that I found really helpful when I was trying to think of our next steps. So we're kind of at the point of deciding who our digital audience is, demographically, behaviourally, and what do they want from us or need from us to be able to give or be engaged with our fundraising communications. So we also think about how does digital work within our current communications plans to ensure that we have a streamline from paper to digital to telephone to face-to-face communications experience. So our alumni and donors or other supporters aren't faced with 3 different asks across 3 different platforms or 3 different types of case of support. It's a really joint up communication plan across all platforms, and all that's different is how you're engaging with us, not what you're engaging with. There's also the push of whether there's audiences who we should be sending digital only communications, the digital native younger generations, but also those who are overseas, really looking at our ecological impact. But also, what opportunities does digital offer for data capture, for insight, and other opportunities outside email? I know Tom mentioned social media, and that's something I'm particularly interested in looking at in the next year or so. I guess it all comes back to the next question about why should somebody engage with us or give to us online? And I think I made this point at the regular giving conference, but when you have hundreds of emails, I don't know about anyone else's inbox, but I get tens of emails every day. Why should you stop and read an email from the University of Leeds? Why should you stop and read an email from Giver Leeds? What can we offer online that we don't offer through post and that we don't offer over the phone? Is there a digital ask there? How do we engage people? Is it the latest content? Is it different content? Something that we should be driving for is why should people engage with us online? And my final point is, how do we measure success? And that's something we're going to be working on the next year. So understanding what insights we can draw from Google Analytics or our email marketing platform, and what this means about our audience behaviours. And then from that, building meaningful KPIs, and not just financial ones, which I know we're all really bogged down to, but engagement ones as well, clicks, opens, impressions, getting to understand what these mean and what they mean for our audience. And finally, can we use digital to give feedback on what we do? Is there engagement that we can drive through digital only? Almost like returning a response form on a donation form. How do we rebuild that in the digital mind? And that's me.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you this afternoon. Like Jessica was describing, here at Manchester, we experienced COVID as a little bit of a catalyst. But before we get into how that all started, let me take you back to the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020, and kind of where this transformation started for us. So we had just lost our head of regular giving. It was very sad, but very, very happily, we ended up with a fantastic new one called Gemma. And what she found when she joined us was we had a very, very basic online giving page. So this thing did exist, but it was quite clunky. It didn't have a great user experience. It wasn't that intuitive for us to use at our side either. So this thing was there, it just wasn't widely utilized. We did give people the option to give online when we were sending direct mails and other things in print, and we gave people the option to give online when we were calling them on the telephone as well. It wasn't that widely utilised even when we did offer it. So particularly with DM, we still found that most of our gifts were coming in via the post and via check, possibly because the site was so clunky that it was a bit of a barrier to giving. We did not send any fundraising emails for about 5 years prior to 2020. And as our new head of regular giving joined us, some of these discussions were starting to happen about whether that's something we could start kind of dipping our toe into. But at the time, it was an outright no-go, no fundraising emails were going out. It's not to say we weren't sending emails, and we have a wonderful alumni comms team here who are doing lots of amazing stuff with alumni around engagement and volunteering and keeping them up to date. We just weren't making any asks. What we did have was a crowdfunding platform, which was provided to us through Hubbub, and that was working pretty well. We utilised that to fund new student and staff activity and projects. So it was me that looked after that, and we were very successful with it. We had dozens of projects funded every year, sometimes running into the 6 figures raised from that platform. But again, we weren't promoting these projects, these digital projects electronically to our alumni. We were relying on the students and staff who were the project owners to do the promotion of that themselves. And we had no social media fundraising presence either. Again, our colleagues in Alumni Comms were doing excellent stuff across all of our social media channels around engagement. And we were telling little bits of stories about what donors were funding. We just weren't making any asks on social media. Could I have the next slide, please, Kat? Thank you. So then COVID happens. And everything changes. So I imagine, similarly to all of you on this call, you get told very suddenly, maybe not so suddenly, that you need to go home. And so the situation that we all found ourselves in the regular giving team here was that we couldn't fundraise. For a little while, we were kind of racking our brains thinking, what are we going to do? We can't send DMs because we can't get into the office to deal with the checks. At the time, we were not considering remote telephone calling. I know some people on the call might have done that right from the start, but that wasn't where we were. And a lot of our crowdfunding projects were getting cancelled because the projects, it was obvious they weren't going to be able to go ahead. Meanwhile, there's this directive from senior leadership that we need to start doing something now to fundraise for those impacted by COVID. So we had two separate campaigns going that the entire fundraising team here, from regular giving all the way up to transformational philanthropy, were to focus on. And that was our emergency student support fund and some of the medical research stuff we're doing as well. So it very quickly became apparent that we had to do something digitally because we had to do something to support these students. And so in that way, it became a bit of an opportunity for us. And we very quickly, with the help of Hubbub, created this incredible online platform, which they very kindly helped us with, for our emergency student support appeal from COVID. And that was back in April 2020. And it was a big success, both in financial terms. It was a big success in terms of how the team worked together, and it was a really good example for us going forwards of what we might be able to do with digital. At the same time as this, kind of just before COVID started, there was this big focus on our fundraising priorities as a whole team. So kind of we went from having lots of different things that our team was fundraising for to really focusing on just 5 key areas that were the key areas from our senior leadership team. So after the success of our COVID appeal and with a focus on these fundraising priorities, we have over the past couple of years introduced e-fundraising appeals to our fundraising mix, and they've been very successful. So every time we create a direct mail ask, there's an e-appeal goes out alongside it. It's been very successful. We have excellent acquisition through e-appeals, and particularly of some of the audiences that we found it a bit more difficult to reach prior to digital. But as part of this, we did make the decision to stop our crowdfunding. So like many of you might have experienced during the pandemic, we experienced some loss of team members, so our team has shrunk a little bit. Our resource became different, basically, and with a focus on the fundraising priorities, we decided that at that particular moment in time, it wasn't the best use of our resources. So instead, we invested that money and our staff time into setting up this permanent online giving platform, which again was given to us through Hubbub. And that's what we use now. And we have all these different pages to support our different fundraising priorities. It's really user-friendly, and our donors have a really excellent user experience. Alongside all of this, we've started playing around a little bit with social media, like York was saying. So we've done a little bit of organic, we've done a little bit of paid social media, and it's something that we're hoping to take forward once our alumni comms team are back up to full capacity. And alongside all of this, of course, we weren't just soliciting digitally, we were also stewarding digitally. So we worked with our excellent colleagues in donor relations team on some amazing stewardship content. So we utilised mainly free platforms that we already had access to from across the university to create digital donor reports, for example, on shorthand. We created loads of video content so that people felt they were being spoken to in a personal way, direct from beneficiaries that they'd given to. We did things like create Slido pages so that people could ask the beneficiaries questions directly, and lots of social media takeovers as well from some of the people involved in these multi-channel appeals. Next slide, please, Kat. Thank you. And that brings us to today. So as I've just described, where we're at now is that our e-appeals and our direct mail fundraising pretty much go hand in hand. We always send both, although it's worth saying that now our e-appeals go to a slightly smaller segmented audience, whereas right at the beginning with that emergency COVID appeal that kicked everything off, that went to pretty much everyone on our database that was contactable by email, and that worked really well for us actually, because we've not been able to do any email fundraising for such a long time. I think given the fact that this was an urgent appeal, it also felt very urgent to people because they were being solicited in this way that they've never been asked to do before. We're completely focused on our fundraising priorities. So for us, that looks like student support once a year, and then something else, PhDs, some kind of building stuff. But basically, if it's not within those priorities, then it's out of scope. And it gives you a real focus to the work that you're doing and enables you to work better with colleagues from across the division as well. Digital is a major part of our stewardship, and we're able to send, obviously, these digital things to people a lot more easily than we can in the post, and we can send it to more people rather than just a select group. And as a result of all this work, we've seen a 5 times increase in online gifts in comparison to where we were pre-COVID, which clearly is a very significant increase. For us, the things that are coming next is playing around more with personalisation. We're really interested in this at Manchester, especially around the kind of use of video and what we might do with our student fundraisers that are part of our telephone campaign team. We're actually going to be working with Hubbub over the next couple of weeks, getting a demo of one of their new products called Mercury, which we're hoping is going to help us with this. We want to do more with social media, so I'm sure we're getting in touch with Tom at some point to figure out what they've been doing so well with their paid for social media, something that we've kind of dipped our toe in the water a bit, but we need to build on. We need to get better at measuring, because this is one of the real opportunities of digital, right? We get this instant data on what works and what doesn't. And I think, like most of us, it's just finding time to actually look at that and figure out how we improve what we're already doing. And finally, not forgetting about printed materials. Digital is not getting rid of telephone, it is not getting rid of print. Those things are still performing really well for us. It just adds an extra layer to our fundraising offer, which engages slightly different audiences and enables us ultimately to raise quite a lot more. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much to Emma, Jessica, and Tom. So yeah, we're going to go into the panel portion of the webinar. So if you have questions for the panel, please do put them into the Q&A tab. I'll also keep an eye on the chat if you put them there. Either way, we'll pick them up and we'll try and get to as many as we can with the time that we have. All questions are great. So no, there's no stupid questions, no bad questions. All your questions. If you don't know, you don't get to know the answer. So please ask away. So while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I've jotted down some of my own. So first one, Tom. So with social media, and maybe it's a question that you can help with Jessica and Emma to kind of answer, as Emma just alluded to, with your paid for social media, what you've been doing in that space, and kind of what you found that works through the kind of different things that you've done with paid for social.
So it's worth starting off by saying that's probably the least developed digital channel that we're working with at the minute. So we very much use it to just accompany anything else that we're doing. So for example, if we have a direct mail and an accompanying email version of that appeal that lands the start of June, we'll make sure that we've got a paid social media advert that's targeting anyone who's got an interest in the University of York around the world, so not just in the UK. So to make sure it reaches everyone who's getting the email version as well as the direct mail version. And we do an A/B test between a static image with the kind of main message of the appeal versus a carousel or a video advert if we've got a video to accompany the appeal. And we essentially just put a few £100 in there as a lifetime budget for the kind of duration of the appeal, which we typically run for about 8 weeks. And after a couple of days, we review it to see which is getting the most impressions, which is getting the most clicks. And we'll make a decision as to whether or not we switch the underperforming advert off, and then we might try and introduce a different test as well. So that's like you alluded to, Emma, that's the kind of the main benefit of digital. You can switch things if it's not working or it's too expensive. You can set budgets for day to day or week to week. What we've not done, like yourselves, is we've not tracked that as well as we should. So we've been quite content with the fact that it's been quite cost effective in just driving people to our landing page on our website. And we've not had the right trackable links in place to see how many of those people have gone on to make donations, which I know people at Hubbub have been pulling their hair out whenever they've asked us how our paid adverts have done, and we can't tell them. But that is our main goal for 2022-23 is to be able to track the results of those so that we can actually approach that as more of a scalable channel for us. So hopefully that's answered, but it has worked well. Like yourselves, Jessica and Emma, we've seen our online donations go through the roof for our direct mail appeals. So whether that's people receiving the DM pack, scanning a QR code, typing in the URL, or seeing the email and going straight to the online form, I think we're at about 45% of all our gifts are coming through online now as well. So it's definitely working. We just need to work out how many of them are coming from social media before I can give you a proper answer to that, I think.
So just following on from that, if you're able to, anyone who's joining us today or watching the recording, if you're able to connect whatever you use to take online gifts to Google Analytics, maybe you have a team and they have a Google Analytics account and you can ask them to connect your site to that, or you don't have one, it's easy to set up. And I think we're going to do a webinar about Google Analytics in the future, but that's a really good way to learn a lot of things about online giving and what's happening and the tests that you're running. So it's one of the number one things that we suggest to all of our customers. We connect all of our platforms to Google Analytics so that we can learn and we can help you learn. But you know, you're looking at one of the, I think what Tom's alluding to that I'm always badgering him about is UTM links. If you just put in Google UTM links, Google even has its own UTM link generator. And a UTM link tells Google exactly where somebody came from. And if they converted to making a gift, exactly what channel, you know, that gift came from. So you get really good data about this person landed on our online form. Where did they come from? And then they made a gift. So the number one metric, and we've kind of mentioned this a little bit, is conversion. Open rates are great. Click-through rates are great. Apple's making it very difficult to know what those are. Thanks for that, Apple. But conversion rates, if you're monitoring that on Google Analytics, measuring that as, you know, goals or segments, that's what you want to look at. Is where I'm spending my money converting to donations? If it's not, figure out maybe why not, do some testing. And if it is, keep doing more of the same. So Google Analytics, UTM links, and who knew QR codes would come back into fashion? I thought they were dead, but the pandemic brought them back. All right, I have a couple of questions here from those who are in the room. So this one is from Alex, and he said, you mentioned utilizing social media for fundraising, and he wondered if anyone has set up their charity on Facebook, and if you do any kind of Facebook fundraising.
We haven't set it up as a charity, no, but we do use Facebook. We set up groups for any of our community events that we run, and we use it to minimize the number of emails we have to send to certain groups, but we've not used it in that way, which is having people give actually directly through Facebook.
Yeah, I think that there may be a split here in that higher education, it's not really something that we use, but know that in the charity sector, Facebook fundraising is definitely something that's used more often because you have more community fundraising events and things like that that happen within the traditional charity sector. So is that the same for Emma and Jessica?
Yeah, I hope I'm not misspeaking here, but I think that there's an issue for us whereby if we were to set ourselves up as a charity on Facebook, it would need to be through the main University of Manchester account rather than the alumni account that we use. And I think there's just been a few considerations there that have prevented that being taken forward. But like York, we do use Facebook for fundraising asks, and both kind of content sharing after appeals, in the run up to appeals, teasers, all kind of stuff. So it is being utilized, just not in that way.
Right. So no one donating through Facebook, but being encouraged to go to the kind of main giving place online.
Yeah, like we have shared stuff on our social media channels, but not done anything specifically that's like giving through Facebook, much like Emma and Tom. Done a little, we dipped our toe in, but nothing major, not even adverts. We're probably like the least most behind in terms of social media in this group.
That's all right. You'll get there. All right. So another question here from Helen. So with a very small team and very little budget / resource, what would your advice be in terms of what to do first, or what maybe would be a quick win?
I'm happy to have a stab at this one.
Okay.
So I didn't have to make this decision, fortunately, in my position, because it was my predecessor who rolled the dice on rolling out crowdfunding. I think if I was in this position, the first thing I would do is introduce email appeals, because they're quite easy to manage. You can get a really user-friendly email provider like MailChimp, which is what we use, and I think Jessica does as well, probably Emma, I can't remember. Yeah, so we all use MailChimp, which is quite straightforward to use. And a real benefit of just doing simple email appeals is that it's quite cost effective for one. You can build in the segmentation, track all the results, make sure you know how each segments responding before you then scale that up into something more substantial like a giving day. I think the first question Kat asked of me when we were planning our giving day was, sorry, the first question I asked of Kat was, how do we forecast our results for a giving day? And the response was, basically look how responsive your individual segments have been to your email marketing in the past. So if you've not done any email marketing in the past and you try and roll into a giving day, it's quite hard to forecast what the return's going to be again. So you're trying to make a decision on investment for something like a giving day. It's hard to do without having taken that step first. So there's a lot to learn there. But again, if you've got the resource to do it, I would encourage a small budget on social media running alongside that as well, just so you've got a few different channels contributing to the results. If you already have something in print, rolling this in alongside it makes the most sense, and I think that's the first step that a lot of people take. They're already putting the work in to get the content together for a print piece, and then they just take that next step to introduce email and social alongside it. I don't know if you guys would agree. It's probably what we've all done to make our first step into digital, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think also like email offers great opportunities for things like data capture and things like that. So like think about how you use email and how you can be clever with it. So it's obviously, whilst we say it's really easy, easier than DM, easier than telephone campaigns, emails, it is still a resource drain. So like, how do you make the most out of every email and just be really, really working them hard? So what is the main point of this book? Can you get in a couple of other objectives like data capture, trying to think engagement, you know, how can your email deliver what you need it to other than give money today?
Yeah, I think absolutely agree with everything that Tom and Jessica have said. I think the things that I would add is first of all, obviously I don't know how big your team is, Helen, but it's worth mentioning that there were only two of us here that were working on this throughout that kind of transformation that I described. We had a third member of staff who was on furlough and then left after that throughout the COVID, the initial lockdown. So we didn't have loads of resource within the team either. There's a couple of things that I would say. I would advise the first step would be to really take a step back. And this is what I was describing with our strategic review of crowdfunding. Go right back to basics to think about what your leaders are expecting you to deliver and take it from there. Find the products that match what you are being asked to do. I know it sounds obvious, but sometimes in this space, I'm guilty of kind of being like, oh, the shiny new thing that could do all this amazing stuff. But actually, is that what I'm being expected to deliver? And the other thing is just to say that loads of the stuff that we've used over the past couple of years have been free for us to use. We have not had an increase in budget for any of this work. Budget has been taken from other areas, but huge amounts of what we've done has been either in-house or with stuff that we've been able to use for free, or that have been kind of loaned to us across the university. So just look for the opportunities where those might be, where you don't have to invest significant amounts of budget.
Mm. Well, that's great. Thank you each for your insights on that. I mean, as soon as Tom said email, I was like, yep, that's exactly what I had in my head, because it is the easiest one to implement, to test, and to just start somewhere, because then you're gathering data, you're gathering information, and you're then starting to learn what works, and having that insights is then really valuable. A couple things maybe just to add is the email system that you use, and it's again that evaluation. So what Emma was saying, go right back and look at everything and say, okay, are we working as efficiently as possible with the resource that we have, the systems we use, what people's roles are, and what our overall major objective is? Do those all line up? And kind of start anew with what you have. And it's similar with the resource that Tom, you said, I didn't get any more budget, but I just moved it around to be more efficient for what we wanted to do and the objectives that we had. So I think that advice is really useful, to step back, see what you can do, and start again. And systems like MailChimp and Sendinblue and Campaign Monitor are all really great systems, and they may not be what you use. They may not integrate with some of your systems, but I'm kind of a fan that it doesn't need to integrate, because if that's going to get me better results than the thing that integrates, I'm going to go with the thing that gets me better results. So that might be something to look into. And then if you are going to go and connect your platforms or the things that you use for online giving to Google Analytics, or maybe you can already tell this, I'd invite you all to, as a bit of homework, look at the conversion rate on your online giving form. If it's anything below 20%, it's probably time to really consider, is that really delivering what we need? So like Emma said, we want to make sure that we're sending out these communications, but then donors were getting to our online form and the form was letting us down. So we call that friction. You don't want a lot of friction. You want the donor to get that email, make that decision to give from the email, and then the donation platform is just the last place they go to confirm how much they want to give, and that is easy to do so. And if there's extra social proof on that platform or on that form, excellent. So have a look at your conversion rate. Is it helping you? Because if you're writing great content, but that conversion rate isn't happening, your online form is doing you a disservice, and it really shouldn't be. It should be helping you. So a couple of easy things to do there. And there's a resource that I really enjoy called Next After. Again, quick Google search for Next After. They do tons and tons and tons of data mining on charitable giving online. They're an excellent resource. So they have lots of stuff on there about how to better your online form. We're actually doing a webinar on the same topic next month, and how to write great emails. So, have another look at what your emails, what they're saying. Are they motivating to donors, like Jessica said? But those are a couple of other things to suggest.
Also worth saying, Kat and Helen, that if you have colleagues who might not be within your initial team, see if you can utilize their expertise. So for us, this entire digital transformation would simply not have happened without our colleagues in our alumni comms team and our colleagues in our development services operations team, we will not do anything without having a chat with them first, because they are such an important part of our team, and they have so much knowledge about how this stuff works, that they've been absolute superstars. So if you have that kind of resource, see if you can use it as well.
Yeah, lean on your team if you can. Okay. So maybe just a question, and you may have, you alluded to it a little bit in terms of buy-in, but when you're going to somebody within the senior leadership, and maybe you do have to ask for additional budget or to rejig your budget and say, I want to do this instead of this. Do you have any tips for teams to help them with their leadership teams in gaining buy-in, things to focus on?
So I think for me, there's a couple of things here. The first and most important would be to be able to demonstrate the impact that it might have. So chat to people within the sector, within your kind of network who you see doing this well, see if they'll share some of their statistics with you, and kind of help you be able to demonstrate the impact that you might be able to have too. To help with your forecasting, it always helps to go armed with these things. But also really make sure that you've thought about the potential hiccups that could happen along the way. If you are able to go to the people with the influence with, I know that this might be a concern, but here's what we're going to do about it in advance, it removes some of those barriers, I think.
At Leeds, we did, like I said, we did like something small. So something that didn't require any budget, anything extra. We proved that it worked, and then we became sort of like hands opened in that respect, being like, this works, we know it works, we're about X number of years behind other people in the sector, really trust that we can do this. And that's kind of like our approach. It's almost like with the, say, crowdfunding appeal we did around COVID, we kind of showed, look, we got X number of 100 people to give online, it does work. And so I feel like being able to show success, even in a limited way, and, caveat that with, we didn't have any extra budget for this, imagine what we could do with a bit of budget, is the best way to do it, I guess, from my perspective. And also just like not only thinking about us as a fundraising function, but as an engagement function as well. In regular giving, we often, look kind of the poor relations next to our major or transformational gift friends. We don't want, we do so much more engagement. So how does digital not only work for a fundraising perspective, but also for a engagement and community building perspective as well? And also, pipeline development and all that sort of stuff.
We did all of the above, but then I think because we're a little further along in our journey, that's what we did at the start to get in that early buy-in. And then I think what we did was work with people like Hubbub to make sure it worked and went to plan when we launched our crowdfunding platform. We made sure we had the right resources in place to actually deliver a good service for that platform. And then when it went well, we nominated ourselves for awards, we shouted about it to everybody who would listen, and we saw that people who were in senior positions were then celebrating our successes as their own, as decision makers. And we find ourselves in quite a fortunate position now, in that we just throw out this term, like, we like to take risks at York, and we like to do things first and try and lead the way, which it's not true. It's not true, really. Like, what we're doing, we're following examples of the charity sector or the commercial world, and we're just a little bit late to the party, really. But in terms of our sector, we have kind of got the jump on a few people because we've taken those risks. And I think now that we've done that well, we just roll that message out and say, we've got this great new idea, we've proven we can do it in the past, let's have a go at it. That's how we ended up doing Giving Day, and that seems to have gone really well as well. And now I don't even need to tell people about it in senior positions. They're coming to me asking when the next Giving Day is, which is so different to where we were a few years ago. So I think just, start, do a really good job of it, and then don't stop, basically. Just keep pushing against that open door. Yeah, a little bit of risk reward. It's my favorite way of working. All right.
I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about that transition into regular gifts. So you guys get donors giving online. They, for the most part, give a single gift. So I wondered if you could talk through about the ways that you now try and retain those donors. And Emma, I think you made a really good point about how this isn't a replacement for any of the other channels. Those channels still work. I definitely agree. This is just something that you're adding into the mix as another way of, acquiring those donors. So yeah, so I don't know, maybe Emma, if you want to start us off, we can go through.
Sure. So this was the excellent problem that we were faced with after our COVID hardship campaign. So we had really good success. We had excellent acquisition. We raised a whole ton of money. And then we were just kind of there like, we've never done this before. How do we retain them? And we're kind of chatting with the people after, and especially after it being an emergency appeal, kind of all of us in the sector kind of like, what are we going to do? I don't know. What are you going to do? So we kind of just decided to go with basically what we know, and we've continued with the telephone calling, and obviously that does really well for us in terms of retention. One of the things that we have worked on separately to the new digital platform is on our direct debit upgrade stuff. So we had the ability to do direct debit upgrades with people previously, but the form was a bit clunky and it wasn't very easy for people to do. So streamlining that has been a big thing that we've been working on. And my colleague Gemma has been doing a lot of work on conversion direct mails as well. So taking that group of initial donors that we acquired and asking them basically by direct mail or by email if they would consider setting up a regular gift. And then if they haven't responded to that, then that's when they've gone into the telephone appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Emma, we've been working on our direct debit proposition quite heavily because unlike Emma, we've been unable to telephone. We've just got the computers working. So we're working towards telephone in the future. We're hoping this year will be it. But like Tom and Emma, our regular giving or direct debit acquisition and retention was mainly done through the telephone. And with that gap, it's really highlighted the need to be able to get that messaging out elsewhere. So we've been testing messaging stewardship. Stewardship is such a powerful way to be able to retain donors. So we have great responses to our stewardship appeals, both online and in direct mail form, in generating and retaining donors, especially moving them on to regular gifts if we can show impact of that. And I guess, it's always that question for us of, if we acquire somebody online, what is their journey? How do we move them through to, do they get a telephone call after they, how does that look? Is that streamlined communications plan between the moment they give, what's their next step? How do we get them to feel like part of the community? If we acquire someone, we have to retain them because that's our big aim at the end of the day. And the best way to retain it is through direct debit. And I'm very much looking forward to getting back on the telephone, is the honest answer.
We've done very much the same stuff that's been mentioned there, but I think picturing that pie chart where I showed that the different channels we've got at play, a big consideration for us was making sure we weren't adding them and cannibalizing existing donations we were getting from telephone or direct mail. The point of introducing those new channels was to unlock donations from previously untapped channels. And then the challenge we've subsequently had is trying to use our existing channels that we know are the best channels for conversion and retention to get people onto a regular gift or keep them giving. Giving Day has been brilliant for us in terms of acquisition and retention. So our Giving Day that's just gone, I think we had just under 800 donors give on the day, and 35% of those were first-time donors, which is great. So just over a third of that were brand new donors, and 45% were active donors. So it's actually worked really well at retaining people who've given to either Giving Day. So we do have a small group who've given to Giving Day for the first time, and then they just give again to Giving Day. We've tried to convert them. They may not have given us their telephone number, but we know that at least once a year they're going to engage with this channel, which is great. It's not the dream though, is that you want them to go on to give more significantly and more frequently, but it's not the worst case scenario if somebody's giving every single year. But we've also, because of the timing of our Giving Day, it takes place in November when we're bang smack in the middle of one of our 6-week telethons. We now have a dedicated segment for anybody who's given to a Giving Day previously, who we've got permission to call. So we'll prioritize calling them instead of sending them an email, and therefore we can make a regular giving ask instead of a single ask. Likewise, our second telethon takes place in February, March. So anyone who's potentially made their first ever gift, or a second or third or whatever it might be, single cash gift to Giving Day in November, we've got a telethon that takes place about 4 months after, which we think is about the optimum time to make a conversion ask. So we're funneling people into our regular giving program as best we can, but it seems to work quite well on its own to retain people at a single gift level. It's just trying to find new ways to get them up to that regular gift and keep them giving.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I don't want to run too much over time, so I think we'll leave it there for the questions. But if anybody has any questions that they want to ask the panel, I'm sure that we can include email addresses in our follow-up, and you can get in touch with Jessica, Tom, or Emma in that way. And as a reminder, we have a LinkedIn group. If you search Digital Fundraising Best Practice, Hubbub Webinars in LinkedIn, you'll be able to find it. We'll be posting when the next webinars are, what the topics are, and if you have any questions prior to any of our webinars, or just general questions that maybe someone in the group might be able to answer, you can put them in there, and we hope to form a little bit of a community where people can come and look for assistance and ideas and sharing what's working in the sector in terms of digital fundraising. So as I said, our next webinar is going to be March 17th, again at 3 p.m. GMT. And Jonathan May, our CEO, has titled this WD-40 for your online forms. Again, it's all about that topic of, is your online form giving you the conversion that you should be seeing? And if not, what are the things to look at to make that better? Reducing those friction points to make it easy for your donors to make that gift if your communications are working as they should to get people to say yes initially. So we really hope that you can join us for that webinar. You should receive a link to the webinar, just like you did today if you are a subscriber. So no need to repeat the kind of sign up process. We have you logged as a subscriber, and so we'll keep sending you those updates as and when they become available. If you're here today and you haven't subscribed to our webinar series, you can find links on our website to sign up to do that. And if you think somebody else may enjoy these webinars, please encourage them to also sign up to our future webinars as a subscriber via our website, which is hubbub.net. So thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Thank you to everybody here who has given up a little bit of your time. And also, if you were watching on demand, you've also given up a little bit of your time. And I hope this was useful for everybody who was joining us. And if you're interested in more resources or learning more about Hubbub and what we do, please just visit our website. But for now, thank you so much for everybody who's attended. We hope it was valuable, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.